Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just got notification from the TV that we are all set and ready to start the meeting at your calling.
So set. Good evening. I am Jeffrey Gabrian, Chair of the Design Review Advisory Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's virtual meeting. The required meeting agenda and application materials are all available on the town website. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19, this hearing is being conducted in accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order number 7B. Will the town planner please call the roll and explain the virtual meeting rules of this quorum and procedure for this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Todd Dumay, Town Planner. Committee Member Parsons Whitaker. Just remember to unmute yourselves. Commissioner Parsons Whitaker.
Here.
Commissioner Crosby.
Here.
Committee Member Giolito.
Here.
With that, Mr. Chairman, again, Todd Dumay for the record, I would like to note that we have a quorum of the committee. Board members. Second. Board members and town staff are participating via WebEx. Members of the public can view the meeting live on West Hartford Community Television or on West Hartford Community Interactive Comcast Channel 96 and Frontier TV Channel 6099, or at www.westhartfordct.org. The meeting is also being recorded for on-demand viewing, which is available on the town website on YouTube. Because of the virtual format of this meeting, there are some special rules and procedures that I need to cover before we begin. First, I will ask all participants to please mute your microphones on your devices when you are not speaking. Second, pursuant to Executive Order 7B, all speakers must state their name and title each time they speak. I will also ask members of the committee and the applicant to not address other participants directly. Committee and requests for information must be made through the chair. After you state your name, simply preface your question or comment with "through the chair." And then when you are done, the chair will recognize the person who is the most appropriate to respond. Although these practices may feel rigid and awkward, they will ensure the meeting is conducted in an orderly fashion and that members of the public who are listening can understand the discussion. I would like to conclude by thanking everyone in advance for your patience. This is our first virtual public meeting, and there are bound to be some bumps and glitches along the way. But we remain committed to the principles of open and transparent government. With that, the first matter on our agenda is 1502 New Britain Avenue, application on behalf of Westfarms Mall, LLC, owner of the property located at 1502 New Britain Avenue, known as Westfarms Mall, within Special Development District Number 12. The application seeks permission to undertake exterior facade renovations to the tenant space just easterly of the north-facing entrance to the mall for a Maggie McFly's restaurant, including associated signage, landscaping, and parking modifications. In addition, the application seeks permission for outdoor dining to be permitted as an approved accessory use for all restaurants within the Special Development District. A formal DRAC receipt is on 5/21. A study session was conducted on 3/12. Town Council public hearing scheduled for 6/23/20. With that, will the applicant please proceed with their presentation?
Hello, this is Wes and I designed for Maggie's. Good afternoon. The first, it's good to see everyone again. I would like to just walk through, I guess, more gearing towards the signage at this point. During our initial study sessions, we had discussed many of the patio and the exterior facade changes, and for the signage, have prepared in the submittal several sightline studies for viewing the sign from various areas around the entrance in that area. If in the submittal submitted, there are certain selections that we've also provided to review today. If the planner would be able to share that, I would like to.
Mr. Gretsch, Dumay, Town Planner. I will be sharing the applicant's presentation via share screen. I did want to point out that at DRAC's last study session on this application, there was an overall favorable feeling towards the application proposed in terms of the enlivening of that existing monolithic facade, as was pointed out by DRAC. Some of the landscape enhancements and also the changes to incorporate outdoor dining were all seen as a positive contribution. However, there was a specific request by the committee to further look at the signage elements and justify the proposed size and quantity of signs. So with that, I'm going to share my screen with everyone. Bear with me a moment.
Excellent. So briefly, in the submittal that you received, the sheets highlighted here are the ones that I would like to discuss right now, that really are pertaining to the signage and where we left off at the last meeting. If we could scroll to the next page, we started off. This is the New Britain Ave viewing from across the street, the east side of New Britain Ave, at the traffic light from Corbin's Corner. Note that there are the sign heights noted there for the existing signs that is in the surrounding area. In the next slide or two, you'll be able to see all of them. The main point is noted at the top, that the letter height seems to be seems to be somewhat legible from here. I know it's not crisp and clean, but it is the backer panel also, which is included in the whole signage area, plays a role here in helping contrast, especially in the daytime, only in the daytime. And there is if you want to scroll to the next page, moved in a little closer. This is west of New Britain Ave on the grassy area between New Britain Avenue and the furthest of the parking area, which you can see the yellow lines of the road that wraps around the parking area. Again, with the sign heights listed at the bottom for the Westfarms entry, which are 22 inches high, which is next to the Maggie's. The Maggie's letters are 38 inches high. And then for context, the JCPenney sign is 8 feet high at the largest letters. And so the next slide, moving in closer, a little better, more of a rendering to help give a real idea of what this will all look like. I know there was some concern that the letters being big enough to be legible from the street, if they're way too big up close. I think that everything is very proportional to the facade, the backer panel, and just everything on that main sign. The next slide, we've gone to I know there's concern about the nighttime, so we've done pretty good job to turn that daytime photo nighttime. And there are also a few reference photos up above showing the existing mall, showing the existing conditions next to the existing entry. And then we've also got the photo of the entrance where PF Chang's in Rio is, just for the overall context of what it representative of what it will, the intent will be with it all lit up. Some of the lighting is not in there, like where the Westfarms signage is. It's not as lit up in our rendering as it is in the photo. So hopefully that will help. So moving away from, in addition to the New Britain Ave, switching, if you were approaching the mall from the south area from Route 9, there's also, wanted to point out the case for, there's signage that is really only viewable from that approach. This is the signage that you see in the photos circled is just the side facade. So we just wanted to make it very aware that that sign, you know, even though in the signage calculations that facade doesn't technically count, but it plays a role, a very important role, I think, in being noticeable on the approach, even as far away from, you know, when you first pull in the driveway off of New Britain Avenue, shown in the key plan on the top right, where there's an A and a B to give you a better idea of where you are in those two photos. The next slide, moving in, still showing now we've got both of the side and the front facade in the both daytime and nighttime perspectives, to help further that southern, just see that southern entry. And so after, you can go to the next slide, please. There's the nighttime. Now, the last slide, if we can go to, we presented the calculation, all of the signage calculations and the sign area breakdowns. On the first highlighted area up above represents the total allowable sign area for the entire facade. Below that, which is 237 square feet total allowable. The total proposed, the next line below, we're at 320.25, which is 83.25 above the allowable, which is the request for a waiver. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, as a reminder, you need to unmute yourself when you're looking to speak.
Okay, but I was. So muted?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Sheldon?
Yeah. The question I've got is whether the Maggie McFly sign over the portico entry at the corner is really necessary. It's not on the view from the south. it seems redundant. I don't mind the small signs that say the drinks and the food that are underneath the major sign, and I like the major sign. I think that's a nice statement, but the second sign over the entry seems to be redundant. I don't know what others think about it, but I'm trying to be sensitive to the tenant's desire to make a big splash, and I think that's great. Well, I'm a little nervous about creating more of a billboard at Westfarms than we perhaps need. There's more signage on Maggie McFly's than there is on the announcement of Westfarms Mall, which is just around the corner. So I'm looking to see if there's a way we could look at that, try to reduce some of it.
Sorry, are you referring to the letters above the entry or the logo above, the circular logo, or both of them on the?
I like the circular logo. I think the logo is important, and I'd like to see that stay. But I do wonder whether you really need to say Maggie McFly's right over that little entry piece, the canopy.
Well, I would, yeah, Travis has something.
Sorry, is it okay if I go? So I think the general idea of the signage over the entry is to give a hierarchy of where the entry is. We feel like if there's just a big sign which catches you from the street, it's not always clear exactly where you enter the building. I think by doing that at the tower, I think it helps a little with the wayfinding. I think that's the general idea behind that piece.
I understand your point. I wonder if the canopy isn't doing that in place of an extra sign. The canopy seems to be part of typical wayfinding. It signifies entry. It's a part of the language of most doors. Something to consider.
This is Todd DeMay, town planner for the record. Just as a reminder for participants on this meeting, each time you speak, you are required to state your name, full name for the record.
This is Kimberly Parsons Whitaker, Commissioner. Question through the chair. It's really a comment. I agree with Sheldon's question. Quite honestly, I personally feel it is redundant. I think the entrance is really obvious. I think what you've done with the awning, the side lights, the transom above the doors, it looks to me to be very obvious where the entrance is. So doesn't strike me that there's confusion there. And I do feel the Maggie McFly's there is redundant. Thank you.
Todd?
Yes, Robin?
Robin Pearson for the applicant. I would like, am I registering?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. The one that we'd have to go back to the final sign breakout to consider this particular point. There's always a concern when you're looking for a waiver for against any of the standards of the regulations. And the bottom line is, does it make aesthetic sense for this particular application? In this instance, Sheldon, you raised a point that said you feel that maybe there is just too much signage as a result of what we're proposing here. But I just want to point out that part of the reason Maggie's needs this waiver is because of the signboard behind the large Maggie McFly over the outdoor dining area. If that was not a different color on the facade, which is there to allow it's for readability from a distance for the Maggie signage, especially during the daytime, the signage, including that over the door entrance, would comply. I believe that that was a difference. Am I right, Wesley, of 125 square feet if we got rid of that? So if the Maggie McFly's over, the outdoor dining area was just sitting on the all brown, I believe it would be totally compliant with the regulations. So I'm not sure there's and it doesn't feel to me like there is too much signage for this particular proposal. And, it comes down, you folks you're the experts, you're the design experts. But when I look at that entrance itself, I feel like it's going to be a little bit naked, not having the orange letters over the awning. I think aesthetically it's helpful, but, you're going to have to make a call on whether you feel this doesn't work from a design perspective, but I think under the circumstances, it should be driven totally by aesthetics and not necessarily by, well, it doesn't comply with the signage regs, because frankly, that's just because of the difference in the coloration of the backing behind the big Maggie McFly signage.
This is Wesley correct with the applicant. That yes, you are correct that the sign backer panel is it's actually 131 square feet additional around the letters, which would then bring everything down under what's allowable.
In terms of the letters
Mr.
versus the area that the letters are sitting on. That's
Chairman,
one.
Mr. Chairman, you were unmuted.
Yes.
You were muted while you started that conversation. You'll have to repeat your statement.
I'm sorry. Clarification from you relative to the square foot coverage of signage vis-a-vis the material it's sitting on in terms of the request. Being here about that, as the applicant just said, that there's it conforms if you get out the way that the background doesn't count as part of the site. Am I reading that correct?
This is Wes for the applicant. Correct.
It's a question for I'm asking the planner. Is that a correct assumption of the square footage?
That's the position of the applicant, that if you take the bounding in front of the sign or the portions which are visible intended to cause readability, that additional square footage because of the background is being added because of that backboard as it's being called.
Well, before we, is Ray Lido, do you have any comments about this signage?
I do, thank you. Ray Lido speaking through the chair. I look at the facade as a whole, and it appears that the opening on the far right is probably for exit only, emergency egress probably, because there's no signage there. So then I look at the tower and I compare it to P.F. Chang, and I have small drawings here. I don't remember the restaurant on the right side of that entry. And the signage is directly over those main entrances. So I personally do not have a problem with having Maggie McFly's there again, because I think as you're walking along the sidewalk, the large Maggie McFly's is eventually going to disappear because you're going to be too close to it. So I don't share the same issue with my other two colleagues on DRAC about that sign being too much. That's my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Is there anything else to offer? And by way of a exterior constraint?
Mr. Chairman, Todd DeMay, for the record, I'd like to note that Commissioner Crosby has a comment.
Yes. Sheldon?
Sheldon Crosby, DRAC. Question on the signage over the door. Is that an internally illuminated sign, or is it just a plastic sign without any lights?
This is Travis from Susa Design. That would be an internally illuminated sign, yes, over the entrance.
Thank you. Still up, Sheldon Crosby. Is the lettering, the small lowercase lettering, is that internally illuminated as well?
It's Travis from Susa Design again. I'm sure you're referring to the local craft eatery and bar signage.
Yeah. Is that internally illuminated?
No, so that is halo lit. So there's a little backer, and then they are lit from the front onto the backer. It just gives like a halo lighting to it. So
I can't read what it says. Heat, bar, or bar, eatery, local craft eatery bar. So that's all just halo lit? Okay.
Are there any other questions?
This is William Salia. I'm representing the Taubman Company in this application. The comment was made about whether or not we felt the signage was too much or competing with the Westfarms entry. I just wanted to go on the record to say that we have reviewed the signage package, the proposal, worked with the tenant themselves, and we feel comfortable with the signage that's being proposed here.
Is there anybody else to offer comment? I'm in between myself as the chair on this, and I sort of feel the concerns that are raised relative to the aspects of both sides. I do appreciate, though, that the main large sign is readable from the road. That certainly is an identification from the street to the mall where the restaurant is, and then on the sidewalk approach. I do share the point that Mr. Juliano suggested, that you won't really see the big, large sign anymore. And perhaps coming from the south, having the corner, which has the signs on both sides, the logo plus the name. It might be redundant, but it may not be for the first time. Somebody's coming there for the first time, and I think with all the other attractions visually, walking and driving up along that main entrance on that east side of the mall, it wouldn't stand out, in my opinion, at least strongly, one might think. So I'm not as concerned about that. And the waiver itself needs to, meet whatever those terms are for it, but I don't have any opinion either way as it being too much or too little. I think it's nicely done. And back to, I appreciate what you did with the site. the plantings and that appearance of it, which is quite nice, in my opinion. So I would encourage at least that as a very positive, aspect of it. But Mr. Todd, are we we need to make a decision?
Mr. Chairman, Todd DeMay, Town Planner. Yes, this is a formal referral. It is scheduled for public hearing on 6/23. If you feel comfortable making a decision and a referral recommendation and taking a vote, you could do that this evening. Or if there is something you would like the applicant to explore further, we do have another meeting scheduled for June prior to their public hearing date, but that would be completely up to the preference of the committee.
Are there any committee members who feel that they would need more verification of this issue of the signage prior to voting? Sheldon, do you want to learn more about the rationale before a vote?
No, I'm satisfied with Sheldon Crosby, DRAC. I'm satisfied with the responses from the applicant. I would vote to move this project forward.
Okay, Kimberly?
Thank you. I would also vote to move the project forward.
And Ray?
I would as well.
All right, then could I have a motion to recommend this to council? From either of them.
Sheldon Crosby, DRAC. I move we approve this application for Maggie McFly's as presented on May 28th.
Okay. A second? Second from Ray. Roll call, town planner. Roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Town Planner Todd DeMay. Before we do that, I just want to remind any members of the public watching and members of the commission that the DRAC evaluate each application for 7 performance criteria. Those performance criteria are relationship of buildings to site, relationship of building to site in the adjoining area, building design, site treatment, landscaping, signs, and maintenance. Not all of those necessarily apply in each application. However, I assume that the maker of the motion, Mr. Crosby, would indicate his motion was that the application before you is consistent with the applicable performance criteria. I just want to confirm that for the record.
Mr. Crosby, confirm that? Yes.
Yes.
Ray? Ray, yes? All right. Now, roll call.
Mr. Chairman, with that, Todd DeMay, Town Planner, I'll be doing a roll call vote. Committee member Parsons Whitaker.
Approve.
Committee member Giolito.
Approve.
Committee member Crosby.
Approve.
Mr. Chairman Gabriel.
Approve.
With that, Mr. Chairman, that's a 4-0 unanimous vote for a recommendation of approval to the Town Council on Special Development District application number 12 for the Maggie McFly's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if we could just pause a second, we'll let members of that last application team exit the call so they're free to leave the meeting. Once we do that, we can proceed in another minute or two with the next applicant on our agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thank you for coming to this new format.
It's interesting these days, but appreciate you hosting this on this in this forum. It's helpful.
Well, we don't have to wear masks yet because this little thing can't get through this electronic stuff yet. Are we set, For the next application.
Mr. Chairman, Todd May, one moment. I see that for the record, we have committee member Schweitzer joining us on the call. Mr. Schweitzer, can I confirm you have audio and visual feed right now on this meeting?
Yes, I see you and I hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you. We are moving on to item number 2 on our agenda. Item number 2 on the agenda is as follows. 1126, 1148 New Britain Avenue. Application filed on behalf of Hart Associates LLC, owner of property located at 1126, 1148 New Britain Avenue, known as the Elmwood Shopping Plaza or the Elmwood Shopping Center, within Special Development District Number 3. The application seeks permission to undertake exterior facade renovations to convert and create new tenant space within the existing building footprint, requests modifications to current parking restrictions, and seeks permission for outdoor dining to be permitted as an approved accessory use for all restaurants within the Special Development District. Formal DRAC receipt on 5/28. Town Council public hearing scheduled for 6/23. This is a new Special Development District application. We have not previously seen this, so this is the first time that you as a committee are seeing this. With that, I will turn it over to the applicant's attorney, Mr. Wise.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Good afternoon. My name is Lou Wise. I'm appearing here on behalf of the applicant. And what we are before you, I think, primarily on is an extension of a facade on the west side of the shopping center, right next door to Pepe's Pizza, which you all may be familiar with. And here to present the application is Jason Pitts, our architect on this project. And I'm going to turn it over to him. If you have any questions, please ask them, and either he or I will answer your questions.
Good evening, members of the committee, chairman, and the town planner. Thank you all for making this possible, the hard work that goes into adapting to these trying times. I want to thank you all for being here and making yourself available to continue to have government moving forward. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I previously sent to the town planner. And if the town planner would be so kind as to provide that and share that on his screen, I will go ahead and go through the presentation and then open it up to any comments or questions that you may have. And thank you for your time. Again, my name is Jason Pitts. I'm the project manager for this project, representing the applicant. I work with Capital Studio Architects, who's the design firm hired by the applicant. And I'd like to just go through a couple bulleted points that are shown on the next slide. Those discussion points include a brief history of the architectural services that Capital Studio Architects has provided the Elmwood Shopping Center over the years. As well as why we are here, the facade renovation that we are proposing, and a new entry for a potential tenant that is hopefully will take up a space that was created by the renovations to Frank Pepe's and the adjacent golf deck. And then also discuss just briefly the economic impact that a new tenant to this space will have on the overall area, and then also the other tenants in the Elmwood Shopping Center. And then I've also included some photos and drawings, that give a little bit more of a backdrop to what we're proposing to do. The drawings that are shown are actually pricing drawings that we provided to the owner for a potential tenant. Those drawings are subject to change, depending on some requirements that the tenant may have, mostly notable to the interior. We do not anticipate many, if at all, any changes to the proposed facade design. So I want to make sure everyone understands that, so that this, it's understood that this is not written in stone yet for the interior of the plan. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll just give a brief history of Capital Studio Architects' relationship with the Elmwood Shopping Center. And we've worked with the Elmwood Shopping Center and Har Associates and the owners for more than 15 years. The original project for the facade renovation took place in 2004. I believe the construction was completed in 2005. What we're proposing to continue with for this potential tenant is to extend the facade along the west side of the building toward the north to provide a main entry for the potential tenant. This is important to wayfinding, to establish a main entry, a port of entry, so that they can conduct business successfully. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So when we worked on previous renovations for the Elmwood Shopping Center, we provided tenant separation for Frank Pepe's and Golf Tech. However, their requirements for square footage also created a sort of a dead space in the rear, the northwest portion of the building, that would be potentially lost or left to just storage. There is a portion of the northwest part of the building that they use currently for storage, with a garage door overhead on the north side, but we don't have any, at this point in time, we don't have any thoughts of changing that northwest storage point. So the remaining void between the northwest current storage and Frank Pepe's and Golf Tech is the area that we're discussing for a new tenant. The area is approximately 1,564 square feet. The existing storage area that would remain is 482 square feet. We would propose that the entry be established at a column point in the structure of the building, so that we could have some side lights and transom over the door and a set of double doors for entry. And then also include the extension of the fascia and the soffit with 2 new columns, and then the ephes pediment, gable pediment for signage, and then also tie it into what we had done previously with the facade renovation. So these are all desirable designs that the tenant would need in order to occupy the space. So, if we can go to the next slide. So the proposed tenant for this space would be the first of a professional health services tenant to the shopping center. We do have retail, personal services. I believe there's a nail shop, and then of course there's a number of restaurants in the space as well, including a liquor store and Epstein Brothers Flooring. So by bringing professional services tenant into this space, it creates a little more diversity amongst the tenants, and it also drives a little bit more traffic to the area and to the shopping center. So it's important that we were able to move forward with this, for economic reasons, but also being sensitive to the design of the overall shopping center, which was previously constructed back in 2005. So we don't plan on deviating from the design. A lot of the details that we used in 2005 will be reused, such as parapet details, fascias, soffits, columns, column enclosures as well. On the next slide, we have a photo of the existing west facade, and directly below that is an extended elevation of the proposed drawing. So working from the south west corner on the right-hand side over in the existing photo, that's cut off at a 45 degree. That's primary entrance for Frank Pepe's. And then, of course, they have a secondary entrance on the side. The door to the left of the secondary entrance, sort of in the middle of that, is more of a utility door for deliveries and whatnot. The proposed fascia and soffit that extend over that door and then further north, and roughly to the left of the existing windows, that's the second set of windows from the left end of the building, we would then provide a new opening, a new main entry with the columns and the pediment with signage. Architectural shingles to match the existing, EFIS as well to match the existing with the same reveals and the same medallion, if you will, of the pediment. That would be included as well. So it very much fit in with what is already there. We're not trying to change a whole lot, just providing access for a new tenant for a space that is virtually unused. So if we can go to the next set of slides, I'll just walk quickly through the drawings that we prepared for pricing for our client. This is some just typical information that we provide on all of our projects: general information, quote information, location plan, and then project information. If we can go to the next slide. This is an overall floor plan of the space. We do have a key plan on the title block that identifies the location of the renovations. But here we have a enlarged plan of the space. And on the right-hand side of this drawing, with the notes sort of going straight up the middle, what we have here is the lower left portion of this space is the storage. And then what's left over, which sort of looks like a backwards F, if you will, that would be the renovation space for the tenant. And fit out would be, per their requirements. We would provide new bathrooms as well, fully accessible, fully code compliant. And then at the bottom of the floor plan, you'll see the extension. Thank you. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate that. And at the bottom, at the entrance along the floor plan, this is where we would provide the facade extension of the fascia, the soffit, and then the gable pediment for the main entry. Thank you. Appreciate that. If we go to the next slide, please. Here we have an elevation. It's a little larger than the previous slide that had the photo and the elevation drawing. But this drawing typically has schedules, door information, and bathroom elevations. The bathrooms are the same except for one's mirrored of the other. And so here we have the proposed facade extension. The existing Frank Pepe's on the right, that's their entry, and then we'd extend the fascia and soffit over to the north, and basically just copy what we have for an entry at the secondary entry for Frank Pepe's for the new tenant. The signage would be similar to what was installed for the other tenants, although the name might change slightly. The tenant that we have now may not be Symmetry, but what they're considering now is a different physical therapy name. So, of course, all that would be compliant with the town's requirements for signage. The existing window on the far left is something that we've discussed. If the existing storage space remains and nothing happens with it, we would consider just leaving that window as is. If the tenant decided to expand into the storage and take that over as part of their space, one of the things that we've discussed is potentially extending that window north slightly and bringing it down, not quite towards the ground, but we believe that the front part of the space at the entry would be reserved for a waiting area or reception area, and it would just provide some more natural light. A window slightly larger than the transom over the door, and then roughly the same height as the head of the door as well. And I don't know if we have one more sheet, Todd. If we can zoom out of here, these are the details that for the facade that match the work that we did back in 2005. So, we have a section through the main part of the pediment and then a section through the main part of the shed roof, the eave, and the parapet at the existing roof. Again, these details are very similar to what we had done in 2005. The elevation of the soffit is the same. The overall structure is the same. So there won't be much changes there. Again, I'm illustrating that we're just trying to recreate what we had done previously. We're not trying to make any major changes. Again, I thank you all for listening to my presentation, and I welcome any questions or comments that you may have.
Anything else to add, Lou?
Well, I don't think so. We look forward to expanding the center. And I think we have a public hearing scheduled for late June. Is that right, Todd? With the town council?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Wise. Yes, Mr. Wise, the town council scheduled the public hearing for June 23rd.
Thank you.
Questions? Questions from committee members? In no order particular. Sheldon? Questions?
I would like to compliment Mr. Pitts, this is Sheldon Crosby, DRAC. I would like to compliment Mr. Pitts on a thorough presentation. I was a little confused when I read the drawings this morning, but I appreciate your words and taking us through the project as thoroughly as you have. I think it's a nice addition to that parking lot in particular.
Thank you. Ray? Questions?
Ray Lido through the chair. No questions. I think the addition of carrying the facade and the parapet to the north really helps to dress up that side of the building, which is kind of an eyesore right now. So I'm happy to see this actually happening. And that it's the same details. It's appreciated.
Thank you. Kimberly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll echo what Mr. Giulito just said. It would be great to see that facade completed, as it were, to the north. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Hugh?
Just a couple questions. Hugh Schweitzer. Mr. Pitts, will there be any new rooftop equipment?
At this point in time, we do not have the services. Jason Pitts, Capital Studio Architect for the applicant. We do not have any mechanicals scheduled. That's something that needs to be evaluated by the owner. It's not part of our contract. So at this point in time, I do not believe that there's any talk of additional rooftop equipment. I would say that the parapet that is there, as you can tell from the photo that I provided, anything that's behind above Frank Pepe's is hidden by the parapet. So I think if they did decide to put any rooftop equipment on top, it'd be far enough away from the edge of the building and hidden behind that parapet.
Good. That's perfect. Again, Hugh Schweitzer, another question. It appears you have bollards protecting existing columns. I anticipate you would want to do that again. Is that right?
I'm just going to pull that up real quick. Give me 1 second to take a look at this. The photo here. Oh yes, yep. I see what you're talking about. In front of the columns for the pediment and any intermediate columns. Yes, we would protect them with bollards as well. It would be the same condition.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, one more question. about the signage, Mr. Pitts, could you speak a little bit to what you think you might do? It appears like it might be just surface applied lettering. Will there be any illumination? And if so, from outside, or is it internal? What are you thinking?
Jason Pitts, Capital Studio Architects for the applicant. It would just be simple plastic signage. I do not believe, I think Golf Tech on the front has illuminated signage, but I don't believe on this west end, I don't believe that Frank Pepe's signage is illuminated. So there would be no plans to illuminate that signage.
Okay. Actually, forgive me, Hugh Schweitzer, one more question. This is it for me. You had mentioned that you may want or need to enlarge the window to the north. Is that something that would smooth your application process to perhaps dash in potential future work to which you're not committed, and then you don't have to resubmit?
Certainly, if we're moving forward on a condition of approval to dash potential or alternate or increase in that window, we can certainly add that to the drawing and indicate whether or not that would be included.
Okay, thank you very much.
Planner Todd? Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd DeMay, Town Planner for the record. I just want to piggyback off of two questions or comments that Mr. Schweitzer just raised. I'm going to share additional content just so everyone can see what he was talking about. So this is a Google Street View of Shopping Plaza. What we should all see here are those bollards that are protecting the columns. And I think the applicant answered that the intent would be to extend that treatment to protect the columns down the new extended facade.
Thank you.
And additionally, I may have to move a view. Can you all see the gooseneck light over the Pepe's main entrance?
I think it's behind, yes, there it is. Yep.
Okay. So I just want clarification. Is any light illumination source proposed for that new tenant facade space? Because Pepe's utilizes the gooseneck lighting. I thought I heard the answer was not at this time, but having that flexibility, might be something that can be built into the application.
Jason Pitts, project manager, Capital Studio Architects. We would not be proposing to put any gooseneck lighting over there. We would treat this the same way that the Frank Pepe's secondary entrance is treated with their signage on the west side. I believe that the tenant would operate their business hours mostly during the day. I know during the fall it does get darker at night, with the time change and whatnot. But I did not believe as a physical therapist occupying this space they would consider any nighttime signage, being as they're not conducting business during those hours. And then any potential future tenant, would then present themselves to the town for reconsideration of any signage as well. And at that time, if they chose to pursue any type of lighting, obviously that would be reviewed. But given the hours of the tenant of a physical therapist, I don't believe they would require any lighting.
Thank you. That's right, Todd.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? If not, entertain a motion. Right?
Mr. Chairman, I would offer a motion in support of this application. I think the applicant has done a good job extending an existing condition. And it does, in my opinion, satisfy the criteria that we use to judge each applicant.
Thank you. A second? Second? There's second to the motion?
For the record, Todd Dumay, I'll note for the record, Mr. Crosby seconded that motion. He raised his hand.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. The vote, with roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd Dumay, Town Planner. I'll now call a roll call vote. Mr. Schweitzer.
In favor.
Ms. Parsons Whitaker.
I'm in favor.
Mr. Giolito.
Favor?
Mr. Crosby.
Yes, I approve.
Mr. Chairman Gabriel.
In favor, thank you.
With that, Mr. Chairman, the vote was 5-0, a unanimous recommendation to recommend approval to the Town Council for the amendment to Special Development District number 3.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting.
Thank you to the applicant. We do have minutes to approve on our agenda. So we'll give the applicant a chance to sign off, log off the meeting, and we can move on to the minutes. You should have all received a set of minutes for March 12th, 2020.
Yes, we did.
At that meeting, DRAC committee members, Mr. Chairman, you were there. Our Vice Chair, Mr. Crosby, Mr. Giolito, and Mr. Schweitzer were all present for that meeting.
Comments or questions? Otherwise, I'd receive a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, Ray Giolito.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you. A second? And
Second.
thank you, Sheldon. Roll call vote. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Todd Dumay, for the record, roll call vote. Commissioner, Mr. Schweitzer.
I recommend accepting.
Mr. Giolito.
Vote in favor?
Mr. Crosby. Mr. Crosby.
Yes, I approve.
Mr. Chairman Gabriel.
I approve also.
With that, Mr. Chairman, the minutes were approved by a vote of 4-0. That is it. We have no other items on our agenda. I will remind the committee that our next scheduled meeting is a special meeting on June 18th. Assuming we have business to take, that meeting would also be a virtual meeting in the same format. I think we can expect to meet like this for the foreseeable future. Do you have any suggestions for improvement to conduct what is a little bit different of a board and commission than others that might utilize this platform and technology, given the design nature and the review of plans? Please feel free to let me know now or send me an email so we can help improve this process, both from your ability to review plans and provide feedback, or if you saw anything on the applicant side. That I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for setting up this way, Todd. I think you've done a very good job getting us off on our first footing. Question I have is not to be answered at the moment to you as well as the other committee members, how this might work for a study session, whether or not there are any ways that this might need to vary, or since it's a very informal approach, I understand the protocol of the back and forth reference to the chair as far as input or comments, but it might be a little bit more difficult to do a study session under this kind of a format. So I just am throwing it out as both a comment and for looking for help, but not necessarily now. And I presume is that also on public review as well, the study.
Mr. Chairman, again, Todd Dumay. Yes, study sessions would be conducted in the same fashion. So we have public meetings at DRAC, meaning that the public has the access to view and participate that way. However, it's not a public hearing, so there is no requirement to accept public comment or testimony. So it's a little bit more flexible than some of our other boards and commissions. And I do agree, the study session could be a bit of a challenge. However, I don't know, mailing out paper copies of beforehand so everyone has a chance to follow along. I hope that's helpful. We can produce larger size sets if that's helpful for you. I don't know how readable or usable the on-screen sharing was from your end. So I wouldn't mind some feedback on that if you were able to see me share the screen and zoom in or highlight things in the plans, if that was helpful or not.
On my end, it was helpful, and I could see everything that you had on my screen, at least as far as and when you marked up that section for the letter applicant, highlighting that part of the building, that was helpful. So I hope everybody else was able to see that, at least. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's Hugh Schweitzer.
Yes.
I think paper copies were tremendously helpful. And I also liked the way that worked out when Todd was bringing up the Google Street View to show the existing lighting. I'm comfortable with this. I'm pretty confident that this is going to work reasonably well.
Thanks, Hugh. Thank you. Brett? Hey, I see. Thumbs up, okay. Anybody else? Sheldon? Good, okay.
Yeah, I would like to underscore everyone's comments. Todd, I do think this methodology works well. I shocked myself that I was able to get online, but I did, and you're bearing with me. But your input, circling the tenant space and bringing up the street view were all great aids. And I do think that the last presentation was pretty well done. You had a script, you read it, and it was informative. I think, Jeff, we could do it with a study session without any trouble at all.
If perhaps, thank you, Sheldon. Perhaps with the script, that's a very good suggestion, Todd, even if it is sort of a little sketchy kind of a session, is perhaps as to the applicant of the format, having it in a little bit of a disciplined form on the ideas might be helpful, as Sheldon indicated. Kimberly, anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the only question that I would have in study session and as we get closer is materials. If there's a project that comes in front of us where we really need to be up close to the materials. So I see that really is the only challenge. Thank you.
Todd, is there a way, the town hall isn't closed, is it?
It's closed to the public currently. If you
Oh.
want,
for Kimberly's question, if let's say there is a suitable amount of material in some future project and we come out of this hole again, they be made available at your office for us to look at on a scheduled basis. That's all COVID-19 proof, so that at least we could be aware of that at the time that we have these study sessions with applicants.
Mr. Chairman, Todd, I think that's a good idea. We certainly, if we have large material sample board, we could schedule that type of a study session. I'm sorry, that type of a session to come in and review the material. If everyone wants to bear with me 1 minute, I have an old material sample board in my office here.
Okay.
I'm curious if I hold it up on the screen, if it provides any value to you or not. It may not,
okay,
but it's worth a try since you're all here.
Sure.
So
pull it back a bit, Todd. That might be too close to the screen. We can just see the overall. Okay. Please, the members, comment if you want to offer.
Can you share your screen, Todd? When you do that, this is Ray Juliano.
What I can't in this fashion, but what I think I could do is take some or request that the applicant provide high quality images sent to me in which I could share the screen and zoom in, and I could ask them to be provided from different angles and at different depths. That way you can kind of see the texture of brick, the color pattern. It gives us an opportunity. That coupled with the ability to schedule viewing sessions in the office, I think we probably could cover the needs. That's probably a good compromise.
Thank you all very much for attending this first virtual meeting. I think it started off a little awkward, but wound up being a very successful one. And I think have all responded in the same fashion as we've done before. I think it's been great. Thank you, and adjourn.
We just have a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Vote. Roll call, Todd.
Mr. Schweitzer.
I second that motion.
Ms.
But we
Parsons
need a
Whitaker.
roll call to adjourn.
Ms. Parsons Whitaker.
So moved. Yes.
Mr. Giolito.
Approved.
Mr. Crosby. And Mr. Chairman.
Move to, yes, adjourn.
Thank you. With that, the DRAC meeting, special meeting of 528 is now adjourned. Thank you all.